I should have gone back inside, closed my door, locked it, and drowned myself in the noise of the television. But instead, I stood there on the porch with the night wrapped around me like a secret I had no business keeping. Her kitchen light flicked on across the fence. I could see her silhouette through the thin curtain, moving slowly, deliberately, as if she knew someone was watching. Maybe she knew it was me. My pulse thudded in my ears as I tried not to look and failed miserably. Then the curtain shifted. She was there in the frame looking straight at me. No smile, no wave, just that steady gaze like she'd caught me trespassing on a world I wasn't invited into. I looked away but too late. My chest burned with the kind of shame that wasn't entirely shame. Seconds stretched. When I dared to glance back, the curtain had fallen back into place. I told myself it was over, but it wasn't. A few minutes later, soft footsteps padded against gravel. Then 3 careful knocks at my door. My stomach flipped. I opened it to find her standing there with nothing but a cardigan draped loosely over her shoulders. Her eyes glittered in the porch light. She didn't ask if she could come in. She just stepped past me carrying the same faint perfume that had already branded my lungs. Inside, she placed the plate of lemon bars on the counter, but her hands lingered there, flat against the cool surface. She didn't look at me right away. When she finally did, her eyes were darker, more dangerous than they'd been outside. "Why did you freeze?" she asked softly. I swallowed. "Because I didn't know you meant it." Her lips parted, almost a smile, almost something else. What if I did? The distance between us was measured in heartbeats. She leaned back against the counter, crossing her arms, not to block me out, but to keep herself from moving closer. The silence thickened. My eyes betrayed me, tracing the lines of her figure, the curve of her collarbone, where the porch light still spilled across her skin. She noticed, of course she noticed. "If you want to look," she whispered again, her voice even lower this time. "Just ask." My throat tightened, and if I did, her head tilted, the barest noted toward the space between us. "Then maybe I'd let you." Every nerve in my body screamed to step closer. One more inch and gravity would do the rest. My hand twitched against the side of my jeans, aching to reach for her, but I didn't move. Neither did she. We stood there locked in a moment that was almost too much to hold. Then the sound of a car door slammed down the street. She startled, breaking eye contact, her breath catching in her throat. A flicker of fear passed over her face. Quick but unmistakable. She grabbed the plate, clutching it like a shield. "I should go," she said quickly, though her eyes lingered on mine as if daring me to stop her. I couldn't. At the door, she turned back, her hand on the frame. Her voice was a whisper meant only for me. "You're going to have to decide what you want sooner or later." And then she was gone, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her perfume in the hallway and a pulse that refused to calm down. I stood there long after the night swallowed her back into her own house. The invitation still buzzed in the air like electricity. Not a joke, not an accident. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't her testing me. It was her offering me a choice. I told myself it was a one-time thing. That whisper at my door, the heat in her eyes, it had to be the product of late-night wine and an unhappy marriage. By morning, it would fade. That's what I kept repeating, like a prayer I didn't believe. But then she came back. The first time it was with a jar of sugar. She claimed she had run out, though I knew her pantry was stocked better than mine. She leaned against the doorway while I fumbled in the cabinet, her gaze roaming lazily over my kitchen as if she was memorizing the details of my private life. When I handed her the sugar, her fingers brushed mine. Too long, too deliberate. The second time it was her internet down again. She sighed, stepping inside before I could even offer. She sat at my table, scrolling her phone, pretending she belonged there. I hovered nearby every second, too aware of her perfume, her posture, the way her blouse shifted when she leaned forward. And the third time, she didn't bother with excuses. It was early evening when I found her at my door again holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. She didn't ask if I was busy. She didn't ask if I minded. She just walked in, set the bottle on the table and said, You're going to pour, or should I? We drank. We laughed about nothing. Neighbors barking dogs, the grocery store clerk, who always mixed up our receipts. But beneath the laughter was something sharper. Every pause in conversation stretched too long. Every time our hands reached for the same glass, the air thickened. At one point, her phone buzzed on the table. She silenced it without looking, her smile faltering for the first time. I caught the name on the screen before it dimmed. Him, her husband. The shadow passed quickly. She tilted her head, eyes locking on mine. You still haven't answered me, she said softly. Answered what? My voice was unsteady. Her lips curved, the faintest ghost of a smile. If you want to look, just ask. The words struck like a match. My heart hammered, my breath caught. I could feel her eyes on me, waiting, daring me. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Instead, she leaned forward, elbows on the table, closing the distance. Her hand slid across the wood until it hovered beside mine, inches away. One more second, and she could have touched me, but she didn't. The silence between us pulsed. My body screamed to close the gap, but my mind froze, trapped between danger and desire. Finally, she sat back, her expression unreadable. That's what I thought. She whispered more to herself than to me. She gathered her things, her phone, her glass, and stood at the door. She paused, one hand on the frame. She didn't look back, but her voice floated through the dim room like smoke. Next time, she said, don't hesitate. Then the door closed behind her, leaving me staring at the empty chair where she had sat. My pulse still racing, my hands still trembling. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was an invitation, and I was running out of excuses not to take it. I tried avoiding her. After that night with the wine, I told myself I needed space, needed to breathe. But avoidance is useless when temptation lives next door. Every time I stepped outside, I felt her eyes through the curtains. Every time I walked past her yard, her shadow lingered too close to mine. And then one evening, she caught me. I was bringing groceries up the steps when her voice slid through the dusk. You've been ignoring me. I turned. She was standing at her fence, arms crossed. But her expression wasn't angry. It was wounded, curious, dangerous. I forced a smile. I've just been busy. She walked closer, stopping only a few feet away. Busy or scared? The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I laughed nervously, fumbling with the keys. Scared of what? Her eyes pinned me. Of wanting something you shouldn't. I froze. The silence between us vibrated like a live wire. She stepped closer, now just on my side of the fence, so near I could see the faint glimmer of her perfume bottle caught in her bag. She tilted her head. You think I don't notice the way you look at me? I don't. I started but stopped. Lying felt pointless. She smiled, soft but sharp. Good. Because I notice and I don't mind. The air thickened. I should have walked inside, closed the door, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there holding grocery bags that suddenly weighed nothing and everything. She reached out, fingertips grazing the back of my hand as if testing a current. My pulse went wild. The touch was feather light, but it felt like a storm. Do you know what it's like? She whispered, leaning in. To live in a house where someone looks through you instead of at you. Her words shook me. I think I do now. We were too close. My heart pounded, every nerve screaming to close the gap, to pull her against me. Her lips parted slightly, her breath brushing mine. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to a single forbidden point. But just as I leaned forward, she pulled back, sharp and sudden, like snapping a string before it breaks. She turned away, her shoulders tense. This is wrong, she muttered almost to herself. But God, it feels so right. She started walking back toward her house, but halfway to the door, she stopped. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes catching mine one last time. Sooner or later, she whispered, you'll ask. Then she was gone, leaving me with bags on the porch, a racing pulse, and the knowledge that we'd stood at the edge of something irreversible, and stepped back only because she chose to. But how many more times could we stop ourselves? The storm started just after midnight. Rain hammered the windows. Wind rattled the shutters. And I told myself it was only weather. But then I heard it 3 frantic knocks. My chest tightened. When I opened the door, she stood there soaked. Her hair clinging to her face, her cardigan plastered to her skin. Her eyes were red, not from the rain, but from tears. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside, her whole body trembling. "Please," she whispered, "just for tonight." I closed the door behind her, heart pounding. Drops of water glistened on her collarbone, sliding down the curve of her neck. She hugged herself as though trying to hold her pieces together. "What happened?" I asked softly. She shook her head, eyes down. "We fought again. He said things I can't even repeat. I couldn't stay there." Her voice broke. I wanted to pull her into my arms, but I didn't. Instead, I handed her a towel. She took it, brushing her hand against mine. Too long, too deliberate. She sat on my couch, curling into herself, and I sat beside her. The silence was heavy, but not empty. I could feel her pain radiating, her need for warmth, for refuge. Slowly, she rested her head against my shoulder. The weight of her there was unbearable and perfect. My pulse thundered, my body frozen between desire and restraint. Her perfume mingled with the rain, intoxicating. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you don't deserve to feel alone," I said. Her breath hitched, her hand shifted, brushing against mine on the couch. I turned slightly, and suddenly her face was just inches from mine. Her lips parted, her eyes half closed. Every nerve screamed, "This is it." I leaned in, heart racing, our breaths mingled. Her hand slid up my arm, her touch feather light but electric. And then she stopped. She pressed a finger to my lips, trembling. "Not yet," she whispered. "If I cross this line now, I'll never go back." Her eyes glistened with both longing and fear. She lowered her hand, but didn't move away. She stayed, her forehead brushing mine for one endless second before she exhaled and leaned back against my shoulder. She fell asleep there, her breath soft and even, while I sat rigid, every muscle aching with restraint. I wanted to freeze time, to live forever in that forbidden closeness. When dawn broke, pale light spilling across the floor, she stirred. She lifted her head slowly, eyes finding mine. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she whispered, "You're dangerous," and then softer, "Because you make me feel safe." Before I could answer, she stood, pulling her cardigan tight around her. At the door, she paused, one hand on the frame as always. "If I come back again," she said without looking at me, "I won't stop myself." And then she slipped into the gray morning, leaving me shaking, knowing we were hanging by a thread that could snap at any second. By the end of the week, the neighborhood felt different, too quiet, too alert. I caught her husband's car parked longer in the driveway, his eyes sharp whenever he stepped outside. Rumors floated, neighbors whispering about late visits, about shadows crossing the street after midnight. I knew it couldn't last. That night, I wasn't surprised when I heard it. 3 urgent knocks. I opened the door and she was there. Not soaked this time, not broken, but burning. Her eyes were fierce, her breath uneven, as though she had run here. She stepped inside quickly, closing the door behind her with a force that rattled the frame. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice low, trembling. I froze. "Do what?" "Pretend," she whispered, staring straight into me. "Pretend I don't feel what I feel every time I look at you." The world tilted. She moved closer, step by step, until I could feel the warmth of her body against mine. Her hand brushed my chest, resting there as if testing how fast my heart was beating. It was loud enough to answer for me. "You don't understand what you've done," she said. "You've made me want something I swore I'd never risk again." Her lips hovered inches from mine. My breath caught. All I had to do was close the gap, one reckless move, and everything would change. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed between fear and desire. She smiled faintly, shaking her head, still frozen, just like the first night. Her words stung, but her eyes softened. She reached up, her fingers grazing my cheek, sliding down to my jaw. The touch was both a promise and a punishment. My whole body leaned into it without permission. And then her phone buzzed in her pocket. The name lit up the screen. Him. The spell shattered. Her hand fell. She stepped back, her breath shaking. He suspects he's watching me closer every day. Anger flared in me. Then leave him. Her laugh was soft, broken. You said that once, remember? As a joke. It wasn't a joke anymore. I whispered, her eyes locked on mine, searching as though weighing whether to trust me with her life. Then slowly she nodded. If I walk away, it's not just leaving him, it's choosing you. The silence was unbearable. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. She gripped mine tightly, desperately, like she was holding on to the edge of a cliff. At the door, she stopped, her hand lingering on the frame in that way that had become her signature. But now her voice was different, calm, resolved, dangerous. If you still want to look, she whispered, this is your last chance to ask. The words sliced through me. My mouth opened, the confession trembling on my lips. But before I could speak, she pulled her hand away, stepped into the night and closed the door. I stood frozen in the silence, my pulse raging, the echo of her perfume still alive in the air. I hadn't asked.